What would it be like to be a lay minister in the Church of England and also pole dance? Well, I find out about that in today's episode of the Challenging the Spin podcast, where I sit down with Mark Walsh. Mark Walsh has been a lay minister in the Church of England since 2021, where he takes services and writes sermons, but he also likes to pole dance and aerial hoop. And so I sit down with him today to talk all things about his journey into discovering this amazing community, whilst also being a lay minister in the Church of England and discovering his faith and his connection with this amazing pole community and his faith in Christianity. We also talk about his amazing career in media, where he's worked in the BBC, both as a presenter, a producer, a reporter, a newsreader, and film critic. He's also worked at Radio 3 and produced their breakfast programme. And he's also worked as a film critic in the Cambridge Independent. So he's had various amazing career paths and his journeys in being a lay minister and discovering this amazing community of pole and aerial. So I sit down with him to talk all about that, to reflect on his journey and the future as he discovers it, and to really hear what it's like as a lay minister, discovering your faith and your Christianity in this amazing pole community, and also looking at it through a male perspective. Mark, obviously people listening won't know, but we actually got connected through an Instagram post on the podcast Instagram. So it was the episode with Alison Hudson where it was about Christianity and pole dance, and you actually commented underneath it and you said a wee bit about your story and your journey. And I just knew instantly, right, I need to sit down with this guy and hear more. So if you want to tell just the people listening or watching a wee bit about you and how you would describe yourself.
I would describe myself as someone who has a lot of interests. I think a lot of people who know me wonder how I managed to fit it all in. I am about to turn 52. Probably by the time people hear this, I will be 52. I used to plan call centres for a living for many, many years. I did maths at university and I always loved figures. I always had my head in books and computer magazines. But I was always quite creative as well, and I've ended up in the last 9 or so years in a career in radio. I work for BBC local radio now. I've presented, I've produced. I got into that through being a film critic, which I've been for about 15 years. I'm known as the movie evangelist. I have a separate set of social media accounts for all that. And each year I go to film festivals and have a really fun time doing all that. 5 years ago, I was licensed as a lay minister for the Church of England. So I spend a lot of my weekends taking church services and writing sermons. And 2 years ago, I became an aerialist with no background in dance or gymnastics or even anything vaguely related to fitness. But it has been one of the best things I've ever done. And then last year, that led me on the pole as well.
Amazing. It's such a span of career and trajectory, but a lot to get into there where we'll dissect your entire career path soon. But I'm interested, especially because you've said you had no previous background in gymnastics or dance whatsoever. What then was it that really made you think, okay, I'm gonna start pole dancing, I'm gonna give it a go, and specifically at that time as well?
I mean, this is probably quite a long story, and podcasts. If this goes on for hours, people will turn off. So I'll try and keep it as short as I can. But when I was a kid, I loved watching sport, but I wasn't good at sport. I once, for a school report, got the top mark for effort and the bottom mark for achievement in the physical education. I kept trying, but I just couldn't do it. I loved watching circus. I loved watching anything to do with performance, anything artistic like that. Dreamed of being able to do things like that myself, but people like me can't do things like that, surely. So, you put all those dreams aside. But something just in the back of my head just kind of kept niggling away, thinking, could I do something one day? I had discovered through things like yoga classes that it is possible to train your flexibility. And so I wanted to try to do that. I arrived at the age of 49, married for the second time, very comfortably married. So comfortable that I weighed nearly 20 stone. And so I decided it was time to do something about it. And so I did a lot of walking and I lost about 5 stone, 70 pounds, depending on how you would like to talk about it. And also, trying to do that, then started to try and do some stretching. But rather than yoga, I downloaded a stretching app and was doing that several times a week and actually started to make some significant gains in my flexibility. And then a colleague of my wife's at her work was into pole, aerial, and contortion. She started training when she was 20, so she also didn't do anything until she was an adult. And so I got talking to Jordana Hartley, my wife's colleague. I think she's reasonably well known in pole circles these days. And so she gave me some advice as a very much a beginner on training my stretching. And then I saw her do a hoop routine at a showcase at Cambridge Community Circus. And that instinct of me that had been buried for decades of wanting to try things like this all of a sudden came out and went, well, I am improving my flexibility now. I'm a lot fitter than I was. Mm-hmm. Could I give this a go? So she went away, chatted with people at a couple of places she trained, and a couple of months later I was taking my first hoop class. And I was instantly addicted. Within a month, I took my first silks class. And so I did hoop and silks all throughout 2024. And then last year, I started doing hoop competitions. I entered 6, I qualified for 4. And again, the level of addiction just going up another level. Up until the beginning of last year, though, I kind of said to myself, no, aerial is where I want to be. Yeah. I can remember saying clearly to my wife about this time last year, no, you'll never see me on a pole. Never going to happen. Not my thing. And then when I qualified for my first hoop competition, I decided to go along to the pole competition on the same weekend just to see what the competition was like before I was actually even one myself. So it seemed to make sense to actually, not go in completely cold. So went sat and watched the pole competition the day before my hoop competition and was completely wowed by the variety of performers, the different levels of ability, even how incredible some of the routines the beginners were, the inventiveness. And that then started to sow the seed. And then Jordana taught me a couple of spins on pole when we were training at one of our classes together. And I was like, this is quite fun, isn't it? So I then started to get the idea of being addicted to that as well. So I tried a couple of different classes for the pole, found one that I liked, did an intro to pole course, and then moved on to my first beginner classes at the age of 51. And absolutely incredible. And not something I would have seen coming, in the sense of pole, even maybe 12 months ago. But, now all these things are part of my life and hopefully will be for many years to come.
That is class, honestly. And I think, just to throw yourself in there and go, you know what, I'll just, apply for these 6 competitions and go for it and just really dive in. I absolutely love it. I think it's really good actually to, on the podcast, I interview, people that are competitive or instructors, pole studio owners, but I think it's good to highlight the beginner journeys as well. And actually, as someone that's quite new to the pole community, how has your experience been as still a relative beginner? Obviously, you've done all these competitions and everything, so you've really dived into it. How have you thought about that and your journey as a beginner and maybe your first impressions of pole?
I mean, I think the word that you've mentioned there, which really sums up this whole experience for me, is community. Why would anyone think that someone my age, I stand out because I'm a man, because I'm 6'3", because I don't have any kind of background in anything to do with this. Why should someone like me who is, well into his 50s now, do things like this? But I've never met a single person who's questioned it. In fact, the complete opposite. Most everyone I know has celebrated it and other people like me. Last year I became part of a group on Instagram of over 50s aerialists. And I'm very much the baby of the group at 52. There are people in their 70s and 80s in our group who are, to a still very good standard, doing aerial and pole. I think one in our group is 82, and she's still an incredible person doing pole. And, a guy in our group, 74, doing hoop and chains. Just some incredible people, and hopefully making me think, I'm only just getting started. This is not something I'm taking up and will just be a thing for a few years. This should be something I can do for the rest of my life and enjoy it. But, that is really only possible because of that community. And I found that in 2 ways. Firstly, through initially Instagram and setting up an account to track my progress. Initially, it was a stretching account, and then last year I changed it to being an aerial account to cover my aerial and pole journey. And that's very much the focus now, the aerial and pole side of things. It took me years and years and years as a film critic to establish a very small following. In about 18 months, my Instagram has over 1,000 followers. It's completely crazy. And I interact with so many people through that who are sharing their own experiences. I've not really started conversations with that many people myself. I might occasionally comment on someone's post, but so many people have reached out to me and said, I love what you're doing. It's so great to see. And I've made friends through that and actually been to support other people at competitions and watch them through doing this. And then actually through those competitions themselves as well, I've made so many friends there. Off to unpack this weekend, which might date when we're recording this, which is an aerial and pole competition in Nottingham. So I know people in both the pole and the aerial competition. So I'm going to go and watch them and catch up with some friends. I'm going up to the In the Spotlight competition in May, which I was in last year. Sadly, I haven't been able to do this year for a few reasons. But I'm still going for the weekend to watch. And I think across the pole and the aerial competitions, I know someone who's qualified in almost every category. So that ability to go and catch up again with that group of friends, see what their routines are like this year, see what they're doing, all those things. And it's such an incredible community. And I had no idea this kind of thing existed. And it's made the whole experience that much more enjoyable. But then, when I'm doing something like doing my competition routine, I'll publish snippets of it and people will reach out and offer advice and, you tried this, if you're struggling a bit with that. I've had people send me, instructional videos. I was struggling with my Delilah vine climb into the hoop. So if you don't know that from a hoop point of view, you are just lifting one leg into the hoop and then you're trying to climb up the side of the hoop until you are seated in. And as someone who started with no real body strength, when I first started, I was just hauling myself desperately into the hoop. It looked really horrible. By the end of last year, it looked amazing, if I do say so myself. I'm just strong and confident. But so much of that is because of people sending me advice and support and tips and technique, and this community just supporting me. So this whole world of people that I found myself part of just makes my heart sing. It's amazing.
Oh, no, it is. It's so lovely to hear. And it's definitely something I relate to. I mean, in the pole classes, I always talk about like, it's like hard to describe to people that aren't in it because it's not like any other sport. There's still that competitive aspect. But even when you go to competitions, I remember my first competition and they said, if anyone falls or anyone makes a mistake, like cheer louder, encourage them more. And I was like, what? Like, if that's crazy. Like, if you went to any other sport, there's that sort of real competitiveness, but it's not always positive. Whereas in this community, it's the most encouraging community ever. And I'm so glad to hear you're also experiencing that. So.
Well, I've seen a few people say, well, I'm not sure if I'd want to enter a competition because, it's nerve-wracking being on stage and you feel like you're being judged. You could not want to be in front of a more supportive group of people than an audience of fellow polers and aerialists. People who are just so like-minded, and it is something really special and something just so unpredictable as well.
And it's so encouraging to hear as well, because I feel like you challenge a lot of the assumptions of people in the pole community. I mean, as you said, you're a male, you're over 6 foot, you're a lay minister at the Church of England. And I really want to actually get into that more, because that's as well how we connected, was through hearing your story as a Christian and your faith. So being a minister, a lay minister of the Church of England, how have you experienced the pole community through that? I mean, it was great to hear that you thankfully haven't really came across anyone that's been, quite negative towards it or negative perceptions on it. But how have you seen sort of your faith and being a lay minister in this community?
I mean, I feel there are some slightly weird parallels in between my whole journey into stretching and aerial and pole and also my faith. That being how comfortable I felt talking about it when I was younger. And I think, I maybe didn't get started into stretching until I was 49 and then other things because, it felt like a weird thing to talk about, wanting to do stretching training. That's weird, isn't it? Well, apparently it's not. Apparently, I've discovered there's like thousands of people who are trying to do this, and now my stretching training is not just a thing of itself. It's in service of my pole and aerial and trying to make all those better as well. So there was a purpose. It just took me a while to find it out. But also, when I was younger, I was actually bullied when I was at school because I was in a church choir, and by a group of boys pinned into the corner of the playground one day, and they made me sing. And it was always treated as the thing. If you were going to church and going to Sunday school, it was something that was very heavily judged, and so I was reluctant to talk about that as well. And then I really, because I was someone who'd been sent to church as a kid, I enjoyed the singing, but I never really thought much about the faith side of things. And then when I got into my 20s, I started to go, well, is this something I want to keep doing? Is this something I want to really be part of my life? Challenge my faith, challenge some of the preconceptions about it. What did I really genuinely believe? What that's done is taken me much deeper into my own faith, started to find myself, rather than being sat in the congregation church, being stood out the front. And that starts to change your perspective on things. And I then felt a calling to actually understand more about that. And in particular, because I was hearing other people talking, and sometimes we see a lot in the church, the issues around women priests. The Church of England has its first Archbishop of Canterbury who's a woman, which is a wonderful day. But it's 2026. We have only had women vicars for just over 30 years. We've only had women bishops for 13. It's ridiculous. But there's things in the Bible that say that shouldn't happen under some people's interpretation. There are other people's interpretation about what is right and wrong about things like homosexuality and about other aspects of life. And of course, we all bring these things to the conversation. I have my own views. I think it's fair to say that my own views are what would be described as quite liberal. Like to believe in love your neighbour as yourself, regardless of what your neighbour is, how they look, and what their own beliefs are. So consequently, I've always tried to bring that same sense of community to my faith as well. But I then felt a strong sense of actually wanting to be engaging with other people, understanding more about my own faith so I could then discuss it with them. And that has led me to being sort of front and centre. So, I've gone through this process in life of being much more comfortable talking about my physicality and doing things, much more comfortable about talking about my faith. So consequently, when people then might want to come and challenge and say, you're a lay minister, you wear the robes on Sunday, you don't wear a, stretchy costume and some weird tights or pole shorts, I can say, no, I think these two things do actually fit together. One is good for the body and the other is good for the soul. And actually those things work very well in harmony.
Exactly. I think that summed it up perfectly. One's good for the body, one's good for the soul. I mean, I completely agree. Like, one of the biggest things about this podcast that I started was I was a young Christian that was pole dancing, and I seen people's faces almost dropped when you say that. And it's like, it's not a bad thing. It's actually, the Bible talks about, body is a temple for the Holy Spirit, look after it, take care of your mental and physical well-being. And I believe pole does that for me. And so therefore, the better mentally and physically I am, then the greater my relationship is with God, and it goes sort of hand in hand. So it's so encouraging to hear that as well. Has there been anyone, or any sort of conceptions you've came across where people don't agree with that, where they think, no, pole and being in a church or having a faith can't go hand in hand?
Maybe I've been slightly naive about this, but I just kind of wandered into it, just assuming everyone would be perfectly happy with it. And I thought, well, the problems come up. Yeah. And the one thing that stuck in my head, there is a sort of hierarchy within the church at different levels. So we mentioned the Archbishop of Canterbury, and then there are bishops and people under that. So I'm a lay minister, so I am not an ordained minister. I don't wear a dog collar, but I can take services. So I work at two different groups of churches where we have a vicar in each church who is the boss, effectively. And then a group of churches, their boss is the rural dean. And I was at a service at Ely Cathedral, which is my nearest cathedral, wonderful, gorgeous building, where we were a whole group of us outside afterwards. And my rural dean, Helena, just leaned over to me and just sort of, oh, how's the pole dancing going, by the way? Love seeing the videos on Facebook. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's going great, thanks. Just this completely unexpected moment. But actually, she saw me having fun, enjoying myself, being out there and representing. Within lay ministry in the Church of England, there's a transforming ministry. They try and highlight people who are doing things differently, trying to bring their ministry in different ways to people. One of the people who trained me is trying to encourage me to be featured on Transforming Ministry for my pole and aerial and lay ministry combinations, to try and show how those things can fit well together. I'm very happy to be an ambassador in that sense if it helps people be comfortable about either their fitness or their faith or the combination of the two. And I am very conscious that different people get different things from pole. And in particular from pole, the origins of it are something that might sit uncomfortably with certain aspects of people's faith. But things evolve, things change, in the same way that attitudes to sexuality evolve and change because, as human beings, we evolve and change, and that all needs to be taken account for. And so I think so many people will take so many different things from pole, their own reasons for being in it, and all of those are equally valid. And, I'm doing this, effectively, initially as a sort of form of cross-training for my own physical fitness. But I absolutely want to be on stage performing. I'm doing aerial competitions now. My future, absolutely, I want to include pole competitions. I want to be there, representing. I'm doing a silk competition next month to a piece of music, which is Halo by Beyonce. I mean, the temptation to stick on my low mister robes to start with and then sort of almost strip them off is very strong. I don't want to cross any boundaries and make people uncomfortable, but I would love to be a standard bearer for helping these two worlds sit comfortably together because I think they can.
Exactly. Like you're just summing it up so perfectly in a way that you're describing it, that with the love and the non-judgmental that's in the pole community is also present and should be present in Christianity. Actually, there's a lot of similarities there. If you should be non-judgmental, you should do it in a loving way and, invite people into both of these communities that can be great together.
In that sense, I do think some of my Christian friends could learn a thing or two from my pole and aerial friends about that loving sense of community.
Exactly. No, it is. It's sort of trying to advocate for, in a way, both communities to show that actually this pole community is incredible. There's some amazing people there. It's so loving. It's so non-judgmental. As well as in this Christian community, Christianity and the faith is meant to be, whether people do that or not. But again, it's meant to be loving and non-judgmental and actually good for your body, your mind, your soul, everything. So it's so encouraging that you're exploring that journey in a deeper way, and it's actually really connected both things for you in your life. I think another one that's definitely sort of a misconception that you push is being a male and pole dancing, which I'm really curious to talk about actually because you're the first male on this podcast that I've interviewed. Yeah, I would just love to hear more about your experience in pole in this community as a male, because I think as well a lot of the people I interview talk about how pole is so empowering and the femininity of it, and actually it really makes them feel like a strong, empowered female, and there's a lot of connection with that with the females that I interview. So I'm really curious to hear what it's like from a male perspective discovering this.
Well, I think there's a little bit of that same sense for me as well. And that might sound unlikely, but as I mentioned, I was someone who was terrible at sport as a kid. I was always the last pick at football. We played cricket. I went to a grammar school in Kent. And so 5 years of playing cricket, there were A, B, C, and D teams. I got picked for the D team once. I was substituted at half time. I was never picked again. That can be quite soul destroying sometimes. We had a school trip to go and watch cricket, watch Kent County Cricket play the West Indies. And the people on the school trip were the entire school first 11 and me. And they were like, what are you doing here? And we're like, I love cricket. I love watching all sport. I love all these things. People couldn't get their heads around the idea that someone who enjoyed watching these things might enjoy trying to do them. The real surprise for me has been actually, discovering ways to be able to do this, because I have, been able to train not only my flexibility, but my strength. I had long had this suspicion I could train my flexibility. I had no idea I could train my strength at all. And over the last couple of years, I've gone from being able to just basically cling to a hoop for dear life. I can do 4 proper full extension straight arm chin ups now. I can do a couple of pull ups. My first competition routine was about 3.5 minutes. A minute and a half of that is me hanging upside down by my arms. I could not have done that at any other point in my life. So that sense of being strong and empowered, I don't think is limited to women. I think a lot of that does stem from this unfortunate patriarchal society that we live in which, thankfully, in things like the church are starting to be broken down. But yeah, someone who struggled his whole life to do the things he wanted to do physically and is now finally in his 50s found ways to do those. Yeah, I share that sense of being strong and being empowered through doing pole and aerial, the same way I see so many women doing. Then there is a difference about being a man and coming to this world. And I think the biggest thing for me was taking that first step into actually doing a class, because I'm a guy in his early 50s. You know, I am still 16 stone. I'm a big chunk of man. What do you wear to a pole class? What do you, how do you approach that? You know, I've been watching some incredible people doing pole on Instagram and online, some real idols. And, I love watching what they're doing. They all, because they're very good at it, typically wear a very small pair of shorts so they can grip the pole as much as possible. And there was a brief moment of thinking, does the world need to see me in just a tiny pair of pole shorts? Thankfully, of course, it doesn't need to be quite that much. But yeah, I do. I went and got myself a much shorter pair of shorts than I previously owned, and then realised as soon as I got on a pole that was the only way forward, because otherwise I was not going to grip the pole.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you lose a little bit of self-consciousness about that. And one of the interesting things for me in that, it's not been anyone to do with the church that's maybe struggled with that a little bit. I hope they don't mind me saying this. It is my extended family who have struggled with that. Mm-hmm. And in particular, I have an agreement with my wife that I am not currently posting my pole videos onto my Facebook page. They go onto my separate Instagram, because my wife was a little bit uncomfortable seeing my legs on Facebook. She'd open the internet and all of a sudden there's me in a pair of pole shorts, and it was like, oh, not sure I need to see this. And I was like, but you see my legs all the time. She's like, well, that's at home. It's not on the internet. So, that was, and I want her to be comfortable with my journey as well. Because, of course, this all came completely out of the blue. We've been together 11 years this year. We're married for 5 this year. Until a couple of years ago, she had no idea I had any of these thoughts or aspirations of doing these things. So it has been a bit of a culture shock for her. I have to say that in her defense. Yeah. But we have agreed that my legs will only be seen on the internet in certain to make her a bit more comfortable. Yeah, that is the male journey of in the world of pole. What am I supposed to look like? Everyone in that sense is so embracing and so supportive as well. And if ever I've got any doubts about anything, whether it's what to wear, what to do, people in a class or online will always make you feel so comfortable. And that's the reassuring thing. Even going into pole classes, I never felt I was in the wrong place. Even when I was in a class that was where I was the only man. And I think so far, every pole class I've been to, I have been the only man. I've been to some hammock classes, which have been actually more male than female. Some of the stretching classes I do in person are about 50-50. So that's quite interesting. But certainly in all the competitions I did last year as well, I was either the only man or one of the very few men there. I have this wonderful photo from the London Aerial Championships last year, one of my favourite photos of last year. We were all lined up at the end of the competition waiting to get our results. Mm-hmm. And there's about 20 of us on stage. Everyone else is a woman in the early 20s or 30s who's about 5'6", and it's me slap bang in the middle of the line, 6'3", 50, in this bright red and black sequin circus top, looking like everyone's dad has turned up in fancy dress to take them home. And I'm so weirdly proud of that photo. But yeah, I do stand out somewhat in most.
No, that is class. I need to go see this photo now after that. But no, it's so interesting to hear, because actually my first pole instructor was a male. So at my first classes, and he now owns his own studio and everything, and it's him and his friend that now I teach. So it's always so interesting now to actually hear in depth what that experience is like. And as you said, like even thinking about what do I wear, like that's something that I wouldn't have even thought about, but it's actually a really good point. What do you wear as a male starting off pole dancing, especially as a beginner when you're a bit unsure and starting out? So you never know, I might see you then start a male pole wear brand in the future.
Well, it's also, I've had the experience of buying some clothing from your podcast sponsor recently.
Oh, anyway.
That is an interesting one, and that's something where I was talking to Jordana, who's my stretching teacher and competition mentor, among many other things. Now, she's become such an important figure in my journey. And she'd recommended this particular brand of leggings to me, and so I went to the website. And the website is divided into a women's section and a men's section. The only thing in the men's section on the website is some hot pants, sort of designed for yoga or pole. There's nothing else. And then the women's section has masses of stuff, including those sets of leggings. And I'm like, well, the leggings look great for doing aerial in and various other things, but they say women's. Am I all right buying these? So, I sort of, I had a couple of different discounts for various reasons. It was a January sale and had an extra 10% discount. So like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Click, got them. They are amazing. I'm sure other leggings are available, but, I can't wait to actually, try them at my aerial classes. And then I had a message from someone else in my over 50s aerial group who's 58 and another man saying, oh, I saw you got some of the leggings. Are they any good? Because I've been thinking about them as well. Instantly showing me that we all have the same nervousness and the same sort of reluctance. Yeah, and I just wish sometimes we could take those labels off because we're all people ultimately. If the clothing is appropriate for what you're doing, there's pole clothing and aerial clothing rather than men's and women's, to my mind. Maybe one day that's the way it will be, but for now, I am contentedly wearing my extra large women's leggings to do aerial.
No, that's something I didn't even think of, but it's such a good point, as you said, like on the websites, making it separate, but how can we actually make it more inclusive where males feel comfortable to go and purchase the clothing too that'll help them? So no, I think that's a really great point. It's so good to hear your male perspective in this pole community. Why not treat yourself and start the year of 2026 off well with buying yourself some new pole and aerial clothing with our sponsors, Dragonfly. Dragonfly is a brand with a dragonfly symbol that combines the beauty of sports with perfect clothing. Dragonfly lives for quality sportswear and maximum exercise experience with a main focus on pole dance and hot yoga. Dragonfly is clothing that gives freedom of movement, it's functional, it's durable, and of course, it looks good too. Today, it supplies sportswear to more than 80 countries worldwide and is one of the top market leaders in sportswear for pole dance and aerial hoop. So treat yourself this 2026 to some new pole and aerial clothing and click the link in the bio to shop now. Thank you so much to Dragonfly for sponsoring this podcast. You have obviously worked in radio and media. You've had a very impressive career there. You're now working at in the BBC and for Radio Cambridge, etc. So I'm actually interested because I interviewed Alicia Bond, who you might have seen on some media things. She's a pole dancing barrister, as the media has called her. And we had a really interesting discussion about the role that the media plays in promoting pole dance and the aerial sports. And unfortunately, it's not always quite positive the way the media portrays it. And a lot of it is quite clickbaity or sort of, quite cheap, titles that really draw the attention of people, but actually doesn't portray what the community or what the person's really about in pole. So I'm curious to hear your experience or your insights on what role you think the media can play in this community and how it could maybe better portray the community.
Yeah, I think there does need to be a better understanding. I think we've talked about this wonderful sense of community. The fact that that wasn't apparent to me before going into that community, I think says a lot about the way in which these things can be perceived. So I work for BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. I have done for about 8 years now. And at the beginning of this year, one of our apprentices from work actually did a week-long series on unusual hobbies. And so actually, part of that series went to 2 of the 3 places where I train on a regular basis. Went to Wings in Cambridge and Cambridge Community Circus, and went as a reporter to both, and did some actual call. I have available for a suitable sum to anyone that would like to see Finn being embarrassed, a video of Finn trying pole dancing for the first time, as well as him going off to Cambridge Community Circus as well. And I took slight offence at this being called a series of unusual hobbies. And actually, that should be the least of our worries. If the worst thing people are going to say about us is unusual, that's probably progress
Yeah.
when all said and done. We have such a power in the media to shape people's attitudes and responsibilities, and particularly within the BBC. We are striving to be impartial, to be objective. Every single employee takes impartiality courses. We try to come to everything from a political point of view, from a neutral point of view, so we don't state any political allegiances we have. We are trying to be unbiased and balanced. Actually, that would do wonders for the perception, the portrayal of the communities which we are both a part of. I think also trying to help these things expand. And we're watching the Winter Olympics at the moment, and so many of the people that I have met as part of the community are loving watching the Winter Olympics and seeing all these wonderful things happen. And I enjoy going and doing my competitions, and I love doing them at that level. I know that the Pole Sports Federation have been trying for so long to try and get something like pole to be an Olympic sport, and I now think that would be the most amazing thing in the world, because recognition like that changes attitude so much. It changes it from being something that's niche and misunderstood to something with the public spotlight, and we've seen that for other sports that have that profile as well. But it's difficult to try to get that level. I think what you would hope is whether the BBC or any other organisation, if someone is coming to report on this or to try to understand it, they do so with an open mind and try and understand exactly why so many of us find it so valuable and want to keep doing it so much. If it was just another form of activity, maybe I'd have done this for a couple of months and maybe drifted onto something else, rather than got to a point where I do 4 to 5 classes of pole and aerial a week. I try to spend 6 hours a week doing my stretching training, 2 hours a week in the gym doing other weights training, other training at home. It very quickly became a way of life for me, one that I'm trying to make sure all the other things in life fit round out. And I think understanding why it means so much to people like me and to so many other people I know, it isn't just a hobby, it is a way of life. It is something that you want to be part of the community as well as doing as an individual activity. And I think, the media does need to do a better job of understanding.
I think you're exactly right. It's, the conversations I've had or you see on social media, it's people that have never, interacted with anyone in the community, or they're just hearing about it for the first time, or they've only seen one aspect of pole dancing and don't really realize the versatility of it. But actually, after you've had a conversation with someone and described, how amazing it is, what it's done mentally and physically for you, you can really see the sort of cogs turning in their brain and going, oh, okay, well, actually, maybe this does have something to it. So yeah, I would love to see, especially with the rise of social media and everything, that the media take on this sort of way of promoting this amazing community in a positive way. I mean, we're seeing it in social media, especially where people are getting shadow banned and, their content isn't getting as much views because it's pole related, or they're getting demonetized, etc. So it's really interesting to hear from your perspective, actually being in this sort of media industry, that you're acknowledging that, yeah, we should talk about the positives more and see the media make an improvement on that.
I mean, even the sort of simple things in terms of how I've developed, because I'm dealing with a bit of an injury at the moment, so I'm not able to get to my classes, and so I'm trying to keep active while I'm at home, and I've had advice from my trainers on the stretching I can do and some of the strength that I can do. So I have a pull-up bar and a set of gymnastic rings, and I am trying every day until I am back at my aerial and pole classes to make sure I get on it and I get upside down. And trying to do different things every day. And so I think one point last weekend, I managed to invert, and then I was doing pull-ups upside down. I did 10 pull-ups upside down, lifting my entire body weight. And I was at a family gathering for some birthdays yesterday. My father-in-law, gently pulling my leg, enjoys teasing me a bit. How's the pole dancing going? Can't do that at the minute, but here's the video of what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And, it's impossible to find that hugely impressive. I still have these moments of thinking, I can't believe this is me doing these things. Mm-hmm. And when you see the way in which it can physically transform, and you don't have to be doing it to the level I'm doing it, of making a commitment of, 12 to 15 hours a week of, trying to train off the equipment as well as on it, because I want to be good at it, I've started from such a point of inability, you can still go to a pole class for an hour a week or go to an aerial class for an hour a week, and you can still see incredible gains and benefits. You know, whatever level you're doing it at, it will have a transformative effect. And those positives alone are something that we should be able to talk about much more.
100%. Yeah, I think pole dancing is such a visual representation of seeing your strength build, like from going to not being able to climb the pole to when you climb it for the first time, the full length of it, you're like, wow, like I wasn't even able to like hang on for dear life, and now I can climb this, 8, 10 foot pole, whatever it may be. It's incredible to see. And yes, I think it's so encouraging when you see people's videos and encouragement out there and their small wins and their improvements. I would love to see more of those.
And even for me, whether it's a pole or an aerial class, typically we're doing some warm up and then some conditioning at the beginning. If I'm grabbed onto the pole, I will then typically do sort of 8 knee raises on each side. Being able to tuck my knees up to chin level while holding onto the pole and holding my own weight again is something I could not have done 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I get such a good feeling from being able to just go and do that. And if you get a good feeling from just doing the conditioning, that feeling of achievement before you even get on to actually doing any spins or climbs or anything else. Yeah, that's something I just wish everyone could understand.
Definitely. No, it's so encouraging. And when you see beginners sort of get those the main goals and the small wins, it's amazing. You can't describe, leaving a class after you've just got that move that you've been stuck on for so long. It's the best feeling ever. But yeah, so I just you've sort of touched on it a bit there. Before I move on to the final question, is I want to sort of ask you, we're reflecting back on your journey and, looking at the past and how you started pole and your journey to it now. And I'm curious now to hear about your future with pole and looking now ahead, and really, where do you see your future? You said there about how you're trying to navigate this injury at the moment and how that's going. So yeah, where do you see you go with this journey?
I mean, again, this is something that maybe might have derailed other people, but I've already said, this is a way of life. This is much more than a hobby. I had an unfortunate accident at the beginning of December. Just one of those things. Broke my right big toe, and it's taken a little longer to heal than I would have hoped. It is healing, but I could see on the X-rays, because I had X-rays done again in about 7 weeks, that it is not fully healed yet. So I'm having to be, unfortunately, a bit more patient than I would like before I can get back to things. That is frustrating because my first aerial competitions of the year are now in less than 6 weeks, and I've got a plan for how I could be at them. But everything has got to go right for that to happen. I might have to make that decision of it's not the right time for these, or I just do one of the two. I should be doing a hoop and a silks competition at Fly High in Barnsley on the 22nd of March. But there are 2 more Fly Highs this year. It's a competition that runs 3 times a year. So if I can't make this one work, then I go to the next one. One of my big goals for the year is a UK amateur aerial performer. I was in the beginner hoop category of that last October, which was an amazing experience, also in Barnsley. They have both a pole and hoop competition. So I'm also going to watch the In Spotlight competition, the first one I was involved in. So my goal for this year is to continue to enter hoop competitions and to try and do my first own choreography silks competition. And then for 2027, to start pole competitions. So, I'm very fortunate to have an incredible group of people. This is the other thing, that I've assembled a group of trainers around me, and I don't know how, just sheer blind luck, but, people who are so incredible at training me in pole and aerial. One of my aerial teachers, she trains people at the National Circus School. She's a professional contortionist. I've got 2 other contortionists in my training team. And a mixed martial arts champion and bodybuilder. It's completely crazy. All of these people are so supportive. I'm sort of working them all into, factoring into what I want to try to do and trying to share with each one. I'm trying to do this on pole, so help me do this in the gym. It'll then support and so on and so forth. Ultimately, why not have grand ambitions? So I'm just about to turn 52. I would love to be, by the time I'm 60, a moderate contortionist, an advanced aerialist, and an advanced poler. And we'll see if I can make any of those things happen. But hopefully, whatever happens, I'll have fun along the way trying. And that's the most important thing.
Love it. Amazing. No, I completely agree. Get those goals ambitious. And I definitely think it's achievable. So I'll definitely see you in the national pole title arena. But no.
Well, this is one thing I need to explore a bit more, because I'm aware of all of the aerial competitions, but I know there are actually many more pole competitions. So, as I start to come towards next year, I want to understand this a little bit better. I'm very lucky that Jordana, my main trainer in these senses, she has won a number of pole competitions herself. She's got an incredible trophy cabinet. So, she will be helping to guide me on that journey as well. She has promised to buy me a pint of cider once I qualify for my first first pole competition. So I'm going to hold her to that. Now it's on record as well as on a podcast, so she's got to stick to it. Okay. But yeah, no, for me the joy is performing. I don't do competitions for the trophy cabinet. I know some people do. For me, it is simply the joy of being on stage and sharing a routine. I crafted a routine for my hip competitions last year, which I love performing. I also did 4 different showcase routines of either hoop or silks with my studios where I train. And so wings, I did hoop and silks showcase in December, and I would love to be doing their pole showcase in future as well. And doing the pole shed in their showcase as well, the third place where I train. And so I just hope over the coming years I get as many chances to perform as possible, whether that's in showcases or competitions, to learn other people's routines, to create my own, and to just share the love. And I've already had this sense that I've inspired a few other people onto the equipment. People have told me that they've seen me doing things and decided to give it a go themselves. And that's really lovely. Mm-hmm. And, if we can just all keep sharing these things together, then, let's see what we can all achieve. Hopefully, great things.
Exactly, definitely. And I know 100% that there will be people listening to your story that will be inspired and will want to give this a go and want to try it or learn more. And will discover it in an incredible way through your story, because I know it's inspired me just to even sit and listen to it. It's class. But yeah, so my final question after hearing your amazing ambitious plans and your pole journey is, really, this podcast is called Challenging the Spin because I wanted to showcase the pole community and its versatility and its amazing benefits, and how to challenge the narrative on the current conversation of it. So I'm intrigued to hear, especially because of your, unique everything. You've got multiple careers going on, you've got your very ambitious plans. What is something that you think we should challenge the spin on? And it doesn't need to necessarily be pole related. It can be as unique as you want it to be.
I think this applies to both pole and aerial, and indeed the stretching we got into this journey in the first place. The idea that it might be too late to get started, because if anything, I have proved that I was 49 with no background in this at all. And look how much I've achieved in the last 3 years. In my flexibility, I'm getting decent back bends now. I was doing reasonable sort of needle scale last week. My foot is now up behind the sort of level of my head, just insane. I am 6 inches off my splits. When I first started, I could barely do a 90-90 lunge. As I said, my strength gains. Being able to hold myself upside down for I can invert for over a minute on my pull-up bar at home and hold myself comfortable with my strength. But also I've been able to put together a 3.5 minute routine. And all of these things I have done at a point in my life when I was from 49 to where I am now turning 52. So I'd really like to challenge that assumption that it is you can't get started. You have to be, someone who's at school or someone who's, in their early 20s to get started. You have to have a certain amount of strength already, that you have to have a certain amount of flexibility already. No, I will hear none of it, because I have proved definitively in every single way, and I'm a man as well. And so there's, preconceptions about men being less flexible than women. I might have strength gains in theory, but I don't think that's necessarily true either. I think women can be just as strong, if not stronger than men, and this community shows that as well. So let's tear off all these preconceptions. Let's challenge the spin on it's too late to get started. And if anyone doubts that, just come and see what I've achieved. And frankly, if you want some encouragement, I will give it to you. Because if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Mic drop. Love it. Love it. That was the best way to end that. No, I think, again, perfect. 100% agree with that. And lots of the incredible men and women that I know that are now performing on the All Ireland Pole Dance Championship stage. Actually, this year they've added an over 50s category. So it just shows you, like, there is this growing movement, and it's incredible to see that it transcends age and other barriers. So it's incredible. But no, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for chatting to me on this episode. I think you touched on so many important topics and misconceptions that have just been completely slashed in this episode. And it's an incredible journey, and we'll definitely be following along and catching up with you as you navigate getting over your injury and competing more in the future too.